He's one of the most iconic characters of Nintendo's history, but to say that he's had a roller coaster of a journey would be a significant understatement. The Kong franchise has gone from a massive debut to a then underwhelming sequel, then to its famous apex, then to a polarizing new perspective, then to an extremely underwhelming new gimmick, then to a triumphant comeback to prominence, and then to complete dormancy for nearly a decade of gaming. So just why has Donkey Kong become so irrelevant, and what were the decisions that were made that led the franchise to be in the place it's in today? I'll answer that, but first, let's start by taking it back to its beginning in 1981. The original Donkey Kong game was a huge arcade hit in 1981, which featured gameplay that was smoother and more innovative than most games on the market at that time. Although the game was titled Donkey Kong, he wasn't a playable character in this title. That was the small man simply known as Jumpman, who was trying to rescue his girlfriend Pauline. This Jumpman would later go on to be known as Mario, and this evil version of Donkey Kong, which more resembled Hollywood's King Kong, would soon become a thing of the past. 1 year later, the sequel known as Donkey Kong Jr. was released for arcades and later on the Nintendo Entertainment System. This one had a major twist though, as the roles were reversed and now the Donkey Kong gang were the good guys who needed to perform a rescue mission, while Mario was now the bad guy trying to keep Donkey Kong as a captive. The game didn't sell as well as the original, but it was critically acclaimed and praised for its improved graphics. With that being said, the gaming industry was beginning to change in some major ways, and in order for the franchise to survive, it would have to adapt and change as well. There were some spin-off games after Donkey Kong Jr., but the next major release wouldn't come until over a decade later, with a completely new approach and on a new console. In 1994, Nintendo released Donkey Kong Country, developed by Rare for the Super Nintendo. This game is still widely recognized as one of the greatest video games of all time, and with its side-scrolling adventure, its pre-rendered 3D graphics, and its fantastic soundtrack, it has aged incredibly well, and is a game that's still widely enjoyed even nearly 3 decades later. With Donkey Kong now firmly established as a heroic character, and with Diddy Kong by his side, this became the prime era of the franchise, and is still easily the highest-selling Donkey Kong game of all time, eclipsing 13 million copies. Donkey Kong Country 2: Diddy Kong's Quest continued the success just 1 year later, as the game has sold more than 6 million copies during its lifespan. Although it wasn't the franchise's best-selling title, many people still consider it as the greatest Donkey Kong game of all time, as it expanded the universe, added fun and engaging gameplay elements, and was accompanied with an incredibly impressive soundtrack. 1 year later, in 1996, Donkey Kong Country 3 starring Dixie Kong was released on the Super Nintendo. This was another quality game within the series, but it was also kinda gimmicky in some of its level design, and the sales were not quite as high as the previous Super Nintendo versions, mostly due to the awkward timing of its release. You see, the Nintendo 64 just made its historic release in the summer of 1996, and introduced the Nintendo fanbase to the vast new world of 3D gaming. Donkey Kong Country 3 was released several months later in November on the somewhat out-of-date Super Nintendo. You can even see Wrinkly Kong playing Super Mario 64 on Donkey Kong Country 3. Due to this weird circumstance, the game has become a bit of an underrated gem within Nintendo's library. In November of 1999, Rare and Nintendo were ready to shake up the franchise, and late within the Nintendo 64's lifespan, they released Donkey Kong 64. In this platforming adventure, DK would be exploring the rich new world of 3D gaming. The game was met with a mix of praise and criticism. Some loved the new take on the franchise, while others viewed it as a somewhat lacking version of Rare's Banjo-Kazooie, as both games had a very similar playstyle and appearance. Generally, the game was still received well and sold over 5 million copies in its lifespan. 3 years later, in September of 2002, a seismic change happened for the future of gaming, as Rare Studios was purchased by Microsoft. During the 90s, Rare was responsible for producing some of the greatest Nintendo games of all time, including the Donkey Kong Country series. Mostly due to the departure of Rare Studios, the Donkey Kong franchise would experience another massive change during the GameCube era, a change that wasn't received well by general audiences and would ultimately put the franchise on life support. Between 2003 and 2005, Nintendo would release 3 Donkey Konga games and Donkey Kong Jungle Beat on the Nintendo GameCube. For the most part, these games were critically acclaimed, although there were some complaints of too many rehashed levels and enemies, and the games themselves were a bit too short for the price tag. The biggest change was the use of the bongo controller, which was certainly a change of pace, and the controllers didn't really serve too much of a purpose on the GameCube outside of the Donkey Kong games. This unusual approach to the franchise may have been the main reason why the Donkey Kong GameCube games were the worst-selling console games in Kong's history. Fast forward to the year 2010, and a new development team was ready to take the torch of the struggling franchise, and Retro Studios produced Donkey Kong Country Returns on the Nintendo Wii. The game wasn't seen as a complete slam dunk in the eyes of some, as the Wii's motion controls were especially off-putting for some of the more traditional fans. With that being said, most players overall saw this as a triumphal return to form, thanks to its stellar level design, graphics, and gameplay. Not only did the game receive a tremendous amount of praise from critics, but it was also easily the best-selling Donkey Kong game since Donkey Kong Country in 1994, selling over 9 million units since the day it was released. 4 years later, Retro Studios did it again, this time with Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze on the Nintendo Wii U, and was later re-released on the Nintendo Switch. Unfortunately, despite the success of both Returns and Tropical Freeze, it's been 7 years since the latest new release in the Donkey Kong series, which brings up questions about its more recent absence. Maybe after so many changes in style and gameplay mechanics, Nintendo doesn't really know what they want to do with the franchise. Or maybe Retro Studios is so focused on other projects like Metroid Prime 4 that there simply isn't any time to focus on Donkey Kong. It's hard to know for sure. I personally feel like the 3D experience was barely explored with the Nintendo 64's version, and I would love to see a Donkey Kong platforming adventure game with a similar style and aesthetic to that of Super Mario Odyssey. Back in the month of May, there was actually a rumor that the Odyssey development team was working on a 3D Donkey Kong game. I'm not sure of the validity of that rumor, but I sure hope it's true. And considering the fact that Donkey Kong hasn't had a new title in such a long time, and the fact that Nintendo basically completely overlooked its recent 40th anniversary, I would say that he's long overdue for a new title that would bring excitement back to the fandom. So what do you guys think? If there was a new Donkey Kong game on the way, what sort of style would you want that game to have? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more Nintendo content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.